Our first speaker tonight is a fellowship-trained cardiologist practicing cardiology at Ascension Columbia St. Mary's here in Milwaukee. He is past president of the Wisconsin chapter of the American College of Cardiology. He's an advocate for the use of plant-based nutrition to help improve heart health, general health, and quality of life, and has seen the benefits of plant-based nutrition in both his personal life and that of his patients. We're fortunate to have him practicing here in Milwaukee and with us tonight. I'm happy to welcome our first speaker tonight, Dr. Joshua Liberman. Dr. Liberman?
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Terry, as usual. And good to see so many people on this call. I'm really excited about this, and I'm also excited to hear from Dr. Goldner. And it's just going to be, it's just fun to be part of this group, and I'm glad to see a lot of the same faces, but always new faces and always new names in this. So that's it's wonderful. This organization is growing, and I think that I think the word, so to speak, is spreading, to borrow kind of a biblical phrase, about the benefits of plant-based nutrition. And you're seeing it more and more. You're seeing more and more societies endorsing this position. So earlier this year, we saw the American Cancer Society come out suggesting reduction of processed meat and red meat, in an effort to reduce cancer incidence. You're seeing the American Academy of Nutritionists and Dietitians with a position statement saying that a vegan diet that's done thoughtfully and planned out can be extremely healthy, which is something that they never supported. And so we're just, society by society, we're seeing benefits. And of course, in our lives, we know it, but what we're hoping is that over the course of time, obviously we can heal populations, not just individuals. When we were meeting in person on the second floor of the Whitefish Bay Library, which unfortunately just seems like so long ago. If you remember, I always liked to give a factoid and an anecdote from my personal practice and what I was seeing, just in terms of patients that I was coming across that week. And I've actually been on vacation, so I only had one day of clinic this week already, and already I've seen a couple patients that have had their lives dramatically improved with plant-based nutrition. So this is not, I'm not cherry picking stories that I see once a month or once every 3 months and saving them up for the next call. These are patients I see every day. And I saw a 70-year-old patient yesterday who has had a severe history, or I should say a history of severe vascular disease. So has had blockages in his legs and actually needed surgery on his legs, what we call aortobifem bypass surgery. So they had to basically replace the connection of his aorta, which is the big blood vessel in the middle of the belly, to both of his legs, because his original ones, the native ones, were so clogged up that he wasn't getting blood flow to either of his legs. So he had to have Gore-Tex tubing put in to replace that connection, and he still had blockages behind his knees, all throughout his legs. He's already had bypass surgery as well on his heart. So he has plaque up and down his body. And of course, when he met me, you ask him what he was eating, and he was eating just the typical, as we say, standard American diet or SAD diet. And we talked obviously about some different changes he could make. And to be honest, he wasn't really that eager to make them in the beginning. Some people are just, it's kind of like almost a slap to the face to hear that they are at fault for all the medical, not all the medical illnesses, but a lot of the burden of disease that they have. It's a lot easier to think that they just have bad luck rather than it's something that they're actively doing to themselves. And so he wasn't really ready at the first visit, but certainly by the second or third visit, he was moving in that direction. And I haven't seen him actually in about, I think it was January. It was before the pandemic hit. I saw him, and when I saw him yesterday, he's down about 7 or 8 pounds, which is not a whole lot. But again, we're not doing this because of weight loss. We're doing this for health. But the important thing was that his numbers, his cholesterol profile, his inflammatory profile, his sugar numbers, because he had middle of the range diabetes. It wasn't well controlled, but it wasn't always also the worst I've ever seen. But he was on a handful of medications and insulin. He's now been able to dramatically decrease his insulin dose. He's still on some. But his diabetes numbers were absolutely perfect. His cholesterol numbers were perfect. His inflammatory markers were perfect. And he wasn't even following a vegan diet yet. He just had gotten rid of red meat. He'd gotten rid of processed meat, and he's moving this direction. He's, eating a lot more vegetables, a lot more plant-based protein. From his standpoint, one of the most important things he commented to me was that he could now walk without having pain in his legs, right? He felt his legs were stronger and that he wasn't being limited anymore by what we call claudication or pain in his legs. And this is even with not completely following a truly plant-based diet or a vegan diet. This is just making really, truly small changes in his life. But these small changes yielded exponential benefits. And honestly, they're enough to prove to him that it's worth doing. And he's going to, he talked about at the visit about wanting to do more and wanting to keep with this because he was seeing the results. And again, with just small kind of cursory changes, superficial changes, he's already seeing benefits. And just imagine, honestly, if he was able to make more significant changes, how much more benefit he would get. So that literally was just a patient I saw yesterday. I'll say, I got another message from an endocrinologist who sent me, just with amazement, another patient who had moved to a plant-based diet about 6 months ago and is now off basically all diabetes medications. And he was amazed. He sent me this note saying that this woman's A1C, her hemoglobin A1C, which is the marker of diabetes that we use, was basically, I think it was 5.8 or 5.9, I can't remember, but off of all medications. And so that's just a little bit above normal. But again, she basically cured herself of diabetes by moving to a plant-based diet. And to me, the best thing about that was that this endocrinologist saw it, right? And so he sees the benefit, and hopefully he also will start recommending to this, to his patients. So two really good patient successes. And by doing this, we can hopefully spread the word and show everybody how beneficial it is. So that's the anecdote. In terms of the factoid, I guess I would start with, just say that in July, we saw what's called a meta-analysis, a very large kind of summary of a lot of trials out there. There's actually a summary of 32 different clinical trials encompassing over 700,000 patients in these trials. And, they're observational trials. It's hard to do a randomized trial for plant-based diets. Some have been done, but not many. But over 700,000 patients evaluated in this meta-analysis, 32 studies. And what it showed, and this was published in the British Medical Journal, which is a pretty highly rated journal, and this is just from last month, that for each replacement of 3% of your protein intake from meat or processed meat or anything like that, and replacing in or substituting in plant-based protein, for each 3% energy intake, there's a 5% reduction in dying, in death rates, in total mortality, which is phenomenal. Again, like Terry talked about in the beginning, it's not just heart disease, it's not just diabetes, this is cancer, this is autoimmune disease, this is everything. Longer lives, longevity, 5% reduction in total mortality for each 3% replacement of meat, energy for meat, for plant-based energy. Now, 3%, what does that mean? What does that look like? Well, we typically talk about how an average person, an average American should be on, and I don't know if I should say American, I guess it doesn't matter. An average human being should be typically on, we say, a 2,000 calorie diet, kilocalorie diet, 2,000 kilocalories. So if you do the math, 3% of 2,000 is 60 calories. So what does 60 calories from plant-based protein look like? Well, a gram of protein has 4 calories, so that's just 15 grams of protein. 15 grams of protein from plant-based sources, that's like 2 servings of beans. That's potentially just 1 serving or even a half a serving of tofu. That's a serving of edamame. It's not a lot, right? I mean, you can easily just think about, take if your relatives or friends or just other people out there, your neighbors, the community, the population, could just replace 1 6-ounce meat portion with a half a can of beans, or a portion of tofu, or a portion of edamame, we would be reducing the risk of death in this country by 5%. That's an enormous amount for just a small half a can of beans. Think about that. That's phenomenal. And I think, just really powerful and really highlights the true power of moving to a plant-based diet. So that's all I have for you. I hope that everybody stays well. I hope that everybody stays physically healthy, but more importantly in this time, mentally healthy. Thank you all. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your communities.
Wow. Thank you so much, Josh. That was extremely exciting. That's, I mean, your examples as well as the research. One of the things I just want to say, give a quote too that kind of goes along with what you're talking about. That although you were talking about living longer, it's not about living longer. It's about feeling better. And that's from Dr. Dean Ornish, who one of the things I didn't mention about Josh is that he sits on the National American College of Cardiology Prevention subgroup with, I think there are maybe 50 people on that.
Yep.
And Dr. Ornish is one of the people on that, as well as Caldwell Esselstyn and Dr. Neil Bernard. So there's some people, it's quite a group. Thank you.
And little old me.
And you too, and our Milwaukee guy. Thanks, Josh. Our next speaker tonight is a board-certified medical doctor and author of 3 best-selling books. She's been featured in multiple documentaries and has been featured on TV, as well as many radio shows and podcasts. She's a highly sought-after keynote speaker who shares the stage regularly with people like Dr. Ornish, Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. Bernard, Dr. Greger, T. Colin Campbell, just to name a few. She's been featured on the front cover multiple times of health magazines. She's a regular contributor to the T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies and has been featured in the Journal of Disease Reversal for reversing her own lupus, as well as multiple case studies in reversing end-stage lupus nephritis, which is kidney failure, with her hyper-nourishing nutrition protocol. She's a graduate of Carnegie Mellon University with honors for genetic research in leukemia and neurobiology. She earned her medical degree at Temple University School of Medicine, was chief resident at UCLA-Harbor Residency, and holds a certificate in plant-based nutrition from Cornell. She's the founder of GoodbyeLupus.com and creator of the Hyper-nourishing Protocol for autoimmune reversal. On top of all of that, she is married and the mother of 2 sons. Speaking to us tonight
Hardest job of all.
That's right. The most rewarding, probably. And speaking to us tonight from Houston, Texas, we're excited to welcome Dr. Brooke Goldner. Dr. Goldner?
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Thanks to Dr. Lieberman for that great information he gave up front. And thank you, Terry, for inviting me to talk to you guys tonight. So whether you guys are interested in being healthier yourself, whether you're a health advocate looking to spread the good word, you're in the right place tonight. So I want to thank everyone who invited me here. And I also want to thank all of you guys who are listening, because you could be sitting back watching Netflix right now, going for an evening bike ride, but instead you're sitting here with me today. So I appreciate that. And I'm glad that you're here. So since we're going to spend some time together, I wanted to start by telling you a little bit about myself. Now, you heard a little bit about me in the intro, and yes, I am a board certified medical doctor and best-selling author. But before any of that ever happened to me, I was a patient, and I was a patient for much of my life. At 14 years old, I started getting sick. Now, at 14, they didn't know what was wrong with me yet. I was just getting terrible migraines. I don't know if any of you ever had migraines before, but I would get the kind where I'd be in bed for a week vomiting from pain. And so they were doing EEGs, and I was getting the sleep studies and the MRIs, and you know, my mom would joke, they see there's a brain, you know, we got one, but we don't know what's wrong. So all I could do was take something for pain. And by the time I was 16 years old, I started getting other symptoms. I started getting arthritis. I developed a rash across my cheeks. And anytime I went in the sun, I would end up with a migraine and throwing up again. And so finally, especially when the rash formed, my parents took me to see my doctor. And we had gone in for multiple different things. They never put it together before. But that time, finally, when they saw the rash and the arthritis and the migraines, they put everything together and realized that I had lupus. So for those of you guys who don't know what lupus is, it's an autoimmune disease where basically the same wonderful immune system that can get rid of a virus or a bacteria, or can rush into your knee and repair it after you bang it on the corner of your bed. That same immune system no longer recognizes what body parts are yours and what is actually an invading virus, for example. And it can mount an immune response or attack on your organs. And it can cause things like arthritis and rashes, but it can also attack any of your organs. And for me, when I was diagnosed, I was already in stage 4 kidney failure. And we had no idea about that. That was a painless thing to me. I knew I had arthritis, but I had no idea I had kidney failure. But they got me in to get a kidney biopsy the next day. And 2 days later, I'm sitting in a nephrologist's office, and he sits down with my mother and my grandmother and myself to tell us that I'm in stage 4 kidney failure. I have the most aggressive type of lupus nephritis, lupus attacking your kidneys. And he said that if I didn't do an experimental treatment, that he gave me 6 months to live, or I'd end up on dialysis or dead. Best case scenario, dialysis. So you got to imagine how shocking that was. You know, I went from aches and pains and headaches to facing down my own mortality. And as a 16-year-old, I don't think I was really ready to absorb an existential crisis. I never really understood exactly, you know, at least internally, really in my soul, what he was saying. I understood the words that was coming out, but I couldn't really feel it. It wasn't real to me in that way. I was raised by an immigrant family. My parents, well, my grandparents are refugees from World War II. So my mother was born in Poland after the war, and they came here to start over. My grandparents had elementary school educations, and they came here to give a better life for their children where they wouldn't be persecuted for being Jewish, and they could start a better life safe and free. So I'm first generation born in America. I'm going to live the American dream. And then I had this horrible illness. And my grandmother is one of the toughest people you'll ever know. She was so stubborn, she just kept living. She finally passed away at 99. But she was one of the most stubborn, you know, amazing people I know. And I never saw her look vulnerable. But when they gave me this diagnosis, my grandmother was on her knees crying and begging God to take her life and spare mine. And I think any of you who've dealt with illness, you know that we don't live with illness alone. When you're sick, it's something that's shared by everybody who loves you. And I saw that very clearly, and I'm haunted sometimes by those images of my family suffering more than I was with dealing with my own illness. And the experimental treatment he offered, which, child of immigrants, I mean, you just do whatever your doctor says, which is not the same anymore. This was pre-Google, pre-internet. So your doctor says to do it, you just did it back in those days, especially in my family. So I took the 60 milligrams of prednisone, steroids a day. I took 6 other pills. And on top of that, they gave me chemotherapy. Now, chemotherapy was at the time traditionally used for cancer, still is. But the reason they were experimenting with it for lupus is because the side effect of taking chemotherapy is it shuts down your immune system, which is a problem when you have cancer, right? Because a lot of people with cancer die of infections because their immune system has been completely ruined by their chemotherapy. But they thought, what if we do it on purpose? What if we intentionally use higher and higher doses of chemotherapy until we can get your immune system to shut down? And maybe we can reboot you like a computer. You know, when your computer starts acting up, you just Control-Alt-Delete or reboot, and then you hope the problem goes away. That was the theory. And they actually still use it now. At the time, I was one of the first people to use it, and they didn't know how much to use. Nowadays, if people get chemotherapy, they might get about 5 treatments or so. Selena Gomez, who is a famous person with lupus nephritis, she had chemotherapy. It didn't work, and she ended up needing a transplant and getting a new kidney. But what they did was they said, okay, we don't know how much to give you. So every time you come back, we're going to raise the dose, and then see what happens. And what happened was I would get some doses, my kidney function would go up. They'd try to stop it, my kidney function would go down. So they kept going. And so I had chemotherapy for 2 straight years. From 16 to 18 years old, I took high dose steroids, I took all the medications, and I took chemotherapy, and I finished high school. And I really, really give credit to my family because, as I said, they come from tough stock and they're survivors. And they taught me that I was still the luckiest person on the planet because I get to wake up free. I had a loving, amazing family. I got to go to school. I was free of persecution. I just had a disease. Having a disease was way better than concentration camps, you know? So I actually had the ability to grow up feeling lucky and blessed, even though I had chronic disease, which is something that I now teach my patients, that that your disease doesn't have to take away your life and your purpose and your passion. It's just something you have to deal with while you're going after your life and your purpose and your passion. And so I got a lot of gifts from living with lupus, and that was one of them. The other one was learning that time is a gift, but not a guarantee. And when we know that we are aware of our own mortality, suddenly it becomes more urgent, at least it did to me, to make a difference and make sure my life meant something, to not waste time or waste days, but to make sure every day meant something. And that's another thing I teach people. You talk about the mindset that comes along with healing and health. My newest book, Goodbye Autoimmune Disease, is all about that, because a lot of people, they come to these conferences, they learn so much, and they still don't change their diet. Why? Because of all the emotions and the sadness and the depression and the trauma that they've never really coped with, that keeps them from doing what's best and keeps them from healing. And so a lot of the gifts I had was the fact that I was in such a good place emotionally that I did survive. The medicines helped me. And after 2 full years, I went into remission, which remission in lupus means you still have it. All my tests were positive, but it's not killing you right now. You're stable. And that's what it was. My kidneys finally stabilized. I still lost protein in my urine, but they said I always would. And but my kidneys weren't failing anymore. And I had my last chemotherapy 1 week before college. And I actually still graduated in the top 10 of my class in high school. I got a scholarship to Carnegie Mellon. I was the youngest genetic researcher at Carnegie Mellon, mostly because I wouldn't give up. They told me, no, you can't do research till you're a junior. And I just kept showing up at the labs and knocking on all the doors until somebody let me do research. Because who knows if you have time? I don't have time to wait till I'm a junior. So I've always just kind of been pushy to I want to keep living. I want to keep doing things. But it was much easier to go to college without chemo. And being a nerd is a lot easier when you're not throwing up all the time. So I actually did pretty well in college. I took my medicines. If I had migraines, I took my migraine pill. When I had arthritis, I took my arthritis pill. But I was able to maintain my remission. Again, remission with positive tests and symptoms, but not dying. And that was pretty good. I was actually really grateful for that. But I decided next after that to do something that was kind of against medical advice. Was, they tell you when you have autoimmune disease, always get enough sleep and avoid stress. So I decided to go to medical school, which is not really the path to low stress and lots of sleep. And I did get sick again in medical school. I was working 100 hours a week. Back then, we didn't have the laws that protect medical students. Now they say no more than 80 hours a week, which, still a lot of work, especially when you don't get paid. But it was more than that. I mean, I was waking up at 4 a.m. to pre-round. I was staying late. I was on call. And I started getting new symptoms. It wasn't my kidneys this time, but I was getting double vision. And the whole world would split in half, and I'd kind of hold on and wait for my world to come back together again. And I finally collapsed one day in one of the clinics. I went to my doctors back home, and I found out that I had a new antibody from lupus that caused me to get blood clots. So I was actually having what we call mini strokes or transient ischemic attacks, where I was sending blood clots into my brain, which was causing me to have the double vision. But once again, I was really grateful because I didn't have a major stroke. They said there was no permanent damage, and I just had to inject myself with blood thinners for the rest of my life, and then I would still be able to keep living. So yay, once again, lupus didn't get me. I used to think of myself as a comeback kid because it's just something really bad would happen. But hey, okay, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. And that's really how I stayed positive. I mean, I did cry a little bit after I got that diagnosis, because as much as I knew I'd probably be handicapped by arthritis, I could be a doctor and be in a wheelchair, but the idea of losing my brain was pretty terrifying because that's really all I was counting on for my life's work. But I was okay. I had to inject myself in the belly every day with my blood thinners. And I came back to a place of gratitude because right when I had gotten sick, I also had just gotten accepted to my first choice of residency at Harbor UCLA. I was leaving Pittsburgh to go to California, where there was sunshine I'd heard of that I hadn't seen in many years. And, and I thought, wow, how many people don't get to live their dream? And here I am about to live my dream that I've worked for. And so once again, I'm lucky and grateful. And so that really was, how it went with my life. I always focused on what was good. I dealt with a lot of chronic pain and illness. But I was pushed forward and I kept going. And right around that time is when things changed. Now, let me share my screen and show you some slides so you can follow along with some stuff here. So let me put that up for you guys. So everybody can see that okay. So I wanted to show you, this was me graduating medical school. And if you can see this little Polish lady at the bottom, that is my grandmother, who's the Holocaust survivor, who actually did not have to trade her life. She got to see me graduate medical school. And the second question I always get is, yes, my dad is 6'7". That's why he's so tall. And I'm 5'9", but I was much taller with the hat on. But you can even see I have these big cheeks that you get from taking steroids, makes your face big and round. But I was there. There's my mama and there's my other grandmother. And so I made it. And really, that was good. I was good. I was happy. But this is when everything changed for me, was something miraculous happened. The first miraculous thing was I fell in love with this guy. If you recognize Thomas Tadlock, he no longer has that hair, but he's just as cute now as he was back then. And Thomas and I fell in love very, very quickly. And within a month of meeting, he wanted to get married. And I very much wanted to get married too, but I had to explain to him about my disease because he didn't really understand what lupus was or what I was going through. He saw that I took shots. He didn't really know exactly what was happening. And I had to explain to him that, you know, I would love to marry you, but you need to understand that I have this disease where I am going to become disabled. You're going to have to take care of me when I'm disabled. I'm not going to live a long life, and I can never have your children because between kidney failure and strokes, I was told that that would kill me if I tried. And this poor, beautiful, amazing man, I barely heard a second go by before he said, well, I'd just rather live a short life with you than a lifetime with anybody else. So we'll just make it the best damn life you could have. And I said, well, cool, let's get married. Oh my God. So, at this point, I was graduating from my residency, and I was not exactly what you would call a healthy weight. All right, listen, I've been living in Pittsburgh, and in Pittsburgh, if you order a salad, they put French fries and ranch dressing on top. So it's not really a place that you can be very healthy. And that was in the hospital cafeteria. And by the way, if you want the best diet to be fat and sick, hospital food is the best way to be overweight and unhealthy. It is the worst food that's out there. And I ate that diet for over 4 years at that point. So I was overweight. I was about a size 11, not comfortable with that, even though I did work out. And now I was getting married. And just like every other woman, I wanted to look gorgeous for my wedding. Plus, I was moving from Pittsburgh to LA. Whole new aesthetic there for what the right size is. But I really wanted to look good. And my husband, so he's a best-selling author himself of a book called Metabolism. And what he learned early on was his research brought him to the fact that you can create a fast metabolism at any age when you feed your cells properly. And he was working at the time with people on MTV. He'd get a call from MTV with some pop star had drank too much beer, had a pot belly, and they would bring him into New York and he'd give him a 6-pack in 3 weeks. So I'm getting married in Maui. I want to look like MTV. So I asked him to train me. He first checked to make sure it wasn't a trap. He's like, you're beautiful as you are. I'm like, no, I really mean it. I'm not trying to trap you. And he said, okay. So I asked him if he would change my diet. Now, I had been a vegetarian ever since I read John Robbins' books when I was 12 years old, Diet for New America. My whole family read that. But back in the 80s, you know, there wasn't really any vegans. I actually never even heard of a vegetarian before that. So my family became vegetarian. Occasionally pesco, but mostly just vegetarian, which meant that we ate eggs and cheese with every meal all day long. I ate a lot of processed food. So I wasn't a healthy vegetarian by any stretch, but I didn't eat meat. And my husband at the time was teaching people that if you eat high amounts of raw vegetables, high omega-3s, you drink a lot of water, and you eat some free-range meat, you can really lose fat quickly, change your metabolism. And I said, that's fantastic, but I don't eat meat. And he'd never trained a vegetarian before, especially living in Pittsburgh. So he had to change things for me. Now he said, first of all, you're never going to lose weight eating saturated fat. So you got to get rid of the cheese. If you want to eat eggs, eat egg whites, but that was pointless and gross to me. So I was like, all right, no eggs. So eggs and dairy had to go. And I didn't eat meat. So he said, all right, soybeans, tofu, let's just try that. So, okay. So I did his plan otherwise. And what happened was after only a couple weeks, I was feeling really good. I'll show you what I actually looked like right before. Here I am right when I moved to LA with a friend of ours. Don't worry, my husband knows him, it's okay. But that's right before I moved there. Not obese, but definitely not at my healthy weight. And within maybe days of changing my diet. I had tons of energy. I felt amazing. My chairman of my residency program was worried that I was too energetic and happy compared to the other residents, which was a really odd thing to be confronted about, that I wasn't appropriately lethargic and depressed. But I felt really good. I had so much energy that I could go to bed. I could go to the gym after a 30-hour shift, which is weird if you don't have lupus, but with lupus was very strange. But I felt really, really, really good. And then right before the wedding, I went to get my labs drawn, and my new doctor, because I'm now in LA, told me that he looked over all my charts. He watched my previous labs, but he thought there was a lab mistake because my labs were negative for lupus. And I went, how, that's not possible. And he said, don't worry, go to the wedding, have fun, and we'll retest when you come back because obviously there was a mistake. I said, okay. So we went to Hawaii. This was me 3 months after I changed my diet. Went from a size 11 to a size 3 in 3 months. My husband also looked good, obviously. He's amazing. And we had a beautiful wedding. We both cried through the whole thing. And when I came back, I saw my doctor and we redid all the labs. And now my labs were negative for lupus and my blood clot antibodies were gone. And my cholesterol, which I was told was high because of my genetics. My doctor told me when I was 20 to blame my parents because it was genetics. And then, well, that genetically high cholesterol that had nothing to do with cheese or eggs was now normal. My blood pressure was gorgeous. And so I just kept on eating this way because I felt really good, and why mess with something that's not broken, right? So after about 4 years of feeling that good, I decided to do something that was, again, against medical advice, and I got pregnant. Now, my doctor freaked out when I told her because she asked me, do you have any medical issues? I said, well, I was diagnosed with lupus at 16, and she went, holy crap. So she sent me to the high risk OB, but the high risk OB sent me back because I was healthy. So she freaked out, started seeing me every week because this is why they get malpractice insurance, you know, it's for people like me. But I had a really healthy pregnancy. They told me the lupus would come back. It didn't. Then they told me the lupus would come back when I gave birth. So when I gave birth, they all surrounded me. And by the way, before I gave birth, they were trying to get me to go back on meds because of the lupus. And I said, well, my labs are good. Why would I go back on meds, right? Because I'm not against taking meds, by the way. I'm a Western medical doctor. Meds can be life-saving. But if they're not necessary, especially when you're pregnant, I didn't want to mess with it. So I said, let's look at my labs. So here was my blood test right before I changed my diet. And you see 2004. These are my blood tests where it shows my antibodies that cause my blood clots. But here I am pregnant and I have no blood clot antibodies. Here it is in 2008. And then here's my test from 2004 again. This is a positive ANA, which is an indicator of autoimmune disease. And I'd had it since I was 16. But here I am pregnant and I have a negative ANA. And so I had my baby without taking any medicines at all. Lupus never came back. My son Solomon right here, he was actually breech. He was butt first. So I had to have a C-section. There was no way he was coming out butt first. And they said, okay, lupus is going to come back any moment. Well, I had the C-section. I felt fine that same day. I was up walking around, you know, like, anyone get me a salad in here? Went home. And I remember telling my gynecologist, I said, you're an amazing surgeon because my patients who get C-sections always tell me how difficult the recovery is, but I feel fine. And she said to me, and I still get goosebumps, she said, I'm an excellent surgeon, which you want narcissistic surgeon. That's very important if they're going to cut you. But she said, I am an excellent surgeon, but you have an extraordinary ability to heal. And I've never seen anything like it. And that still gives me goosebumps because I couldn't heal anything with lupus. I had a sinus infection that lasted 6 months once. I had a pimple that turned into a big mass that they had to slice open because I couldn't even heal an infection. Yet I can heal from a surgery in a day or two. So that's when we really started to understand something was different about me. The second clue was 9 days after I had Solomon was my birthday. And my mom had come to stay with us to help me with the baby. And she said, go out with Tom for a little bit while the baby's sleeping. When he wakes up, I'll text you so you can come nurse. So I hadn't put anything on but pajamas for 9 days because I was nursing a baby and sleeping all the time and wasn't on any diet or anything. And 9 days later, I go to get dressed and I just pick up the clothes I wore before I got pregnant and they fit. And I'd gained 40 pounds during my pregnancy. So now we knew something's weird. My husband took a photo shoot because at the time he had the largest boot camps in Orange County and he thought that this would be good for business because he said, this is his words, I have people in my boot camp that haven't lost their baby weight and their kids are in college. So he thought, let's do a full photo shoot. So he took pictures, and so this is when we finally realized that something had happened that was different, because I was supposed to have a disease that didn't let me have children, but I had one and it didn't come back. My labs were negative. I felt amazing. I had just lost all of my pregnancy weight in a matter of days, having done nothing. And we realized, wait a minute, my body's acting like a body that's reacting in real time to anything we ask it to do. And that's not typical. And the only thing we had ever changed was my diet. And we thought, what if there was something to that? Because I'd never really thought about it before. You know, sometimes people will ask me, you know, they get mad at their doctor for not knowing or seeing or being able to witness how much better they are. I'm a Western trained medical doctor. I did genetic research before I became a doctor. I had been healthy for 4 years and I still said I had lupus. I had normal labs for 4 years and I still said I had lupus. It didn't sink into me that it was possible to see something that I was trained couldn't exist. But finally, when I had my son, finally I saw it. Like, this is different now. I don't think that I have this disease anymore. And so that's when we started to really research it. And we spent a year just researching, because I'd never heard of plant-based doctors. I wasn't trained to even look for that. So we actually went back to the science and we studied cellular biology and nutrition and how nutrition can affect cellular repair and inflammation and your immune system. And we realized that we'd accidentally created the most anti-inflammatory nutrition possible. And then we started to test it, because I'm not of the belief that just because you did something and you got better means everything you did is why you got better. How many times do you see that, right? Where somebody, especially like with paleo and other things, will go, I ate this and I'm in remission, so just eat everything I did. But they never tested, like maybe it wasn't everything. Maybe I got better in spite of some things. That it's really not science yet. And we're both scientists, so we had to make sure it was reproducible. And so we tested it and made sure that we had the components down where everyone we exposed that nutrition to had the same result, whether it was lupus or RA or any other kind of illness. They immediately got the same kind of results that I did. And that's when we started to actually share it. Now, in the meantime, we decided to do this one more time. And that was me 2 days before I gave birth to my son, Alex. And my husband said he's never seen such a happy pregnant lady. Like, I even smile while I'm vomiting, because hey, you know, I vomited from chemo a long time, but being able to vomit because I was actually able to have children, it's like the best thing in the world. So I love that belly. But this is my family now. That's my husband and Solomon and my Alex. And, you know, this has been such an extraordinary thing for me, and has been such an exciting journey to be able to not only live a dream that I never even allowed myself to have, because I planned for a white coat, not a white dress. I never let myself fantasize about a life that I probably couldn't have. I focused on what I could do and what I could have. But being able to live that for myself, and then now be able to give that gift back to others, is beyond what I ever expected to even do as a doctor. I thought, well, maybe one of the greatest gifts I'll have as a doctor is being able to teach people that you can have a purpose-filled, beautiful, happy life with chronic disease. I never thought that I could potentially help people eliminate chronic disease and have normal lives again, and be able to have children and to not have to look forward to disability in their life. So it has been quite a tremendous experience. And, you know, I've been able to reproduce this in so many people I could spend the whole day showing you. This is Kathy. She did Rapid Recovery with me. So Rapid Recovery is a program where you can do with me for 4 weeks or 6 weeks, where I'm basically your hovering, overbearing Jewish mother. What did you eat? How did you sleep? Did you meditate? How many vegetables did you have? How much water did you drink? Did you have fun today? Every day. So she did this program 4 weeks one-on-one with me. And when I met her, she was about to retire because of her disability from lupus. She loved her job and she wanted to work, but she had to go up 2 flights of stairs to run the meeting she was supposed to run. And it'd been 2 years since she could go up those stairs. And she said, I can't do my job anymore. And after 4 weeks, well, 3 weeks into the program, she could go up and down stairs again. She was chopping wood. She was riding her bicycle. She even changed her own tire. And this is the same woman who couldn't even stand up without somebody helping her beforehand. She couldn't even put on her own pants, and she changed her own tire. So at the end of 4 weeks, you can see there was a big change. That was her birthday. So instead of a cake, she had the fruit dish there. But she was able to go back and do her job. And even more exciting was that when she retired, when she was planning to retire, her long-term partner was going to be her caretaker. But because she no longer was disabled, they decided to get married and go on honeymoon hiking through the Grand Canyon. And they sent me that picture from the Grand Canyon. And you see the smiles on their faces. This is what I think about when I think about what my job is as a physician. It's not about symptoms. It's not about even just diet or diseases, but it's about giving people their lives back. And she's one person that I look at that picture and I just feel so much happiness. And this has been over and over again in my life. This is David, and David had lupus scleroderma and Sjogren's disease, where he was in the ICU for 4 months at a time. And even with that, he had a single mom who made sure he got through college, but could never get a job because you could see his face on the left. That was him on all the medicine Western medicine could give him. And that's what he looked like. And he said he couldn't even get people to look him in the eye. He couldn't get, he'd get an interview and they couldn't even make eye contact with him. And on top of this, the way his face looked, and by the way, you could see what his face looked like. The after picture is him on 0 medicine on my nutrition plan. Okay. If you look at this one, on the left side, he had scleroderma, which caused his skin to harden and break open, and he would get these infections down to his bone. And his doctor told him the only thing they could do is amputate his fingers. That was the next step, was to amputate his fingers. He went on my nutrition plan, and in a month, his hands looked like that. And the interesting thing is, David just recently won a competition, an art competition in a Los Angeles gallery with those same fingers that they almost took from him. And so this is David now. He wanted you to see a picture of him going to work. He was able to get a job 4 weeks after he did my program. This is a picture of his 3D artwork that he creates. Really gorgeous. And at work, they call him the rabbit. So on his birthday, they gave him carrots. But he works with underserved youth and he helps them come into society and get jobs. He creates beautiful artwork that's shown in galleries across Los Angeles. He's had a girlfriend. He now has a full life, where when I met him, he used to sit home and just eat at 7-Eleven while his mom worked because he had no life at all. And this is what he has now, that he changed his diet and he got his health back. That's my David. I'm still in touch with him. His mother keeps a copy of Goodbye Lupus and David's before and after pictures in her purse. If you meet Gloria, she's going to sit you down and tell you the story and make sure that you know all about it. I could do this all day. This is Danielle, who had lupus and Sjogren's, and if she even tried to walk outside to her car and it got hit by the sunlight, she could pass out. She had neuropathy in both arms. She had such bad Sjogren's and dryness in her eyes. It was so hard to keep her eyes open without feeling like stuff was stuck in it. She was a 20-something-year-old girl who was laying home in bed, but when she got home from work because she was too tired to socialize, within 2 weeks, her neuropathy went away. And by the way, her neurologist referred her to me. When I started this a decade ago, it was all people finding me on their own. Now I get doctor referrals, which is really nice. So her neurologist referred her to me. And 2 weeks into it, her neuropathy was gone. By the end of 2 months, she was out and about in the sunlight. And she is now married, has been in remission for about 6 years now, with no return of any of her symptoms at all. She now has an Instagram page where people follow her, all about diet and nutrition. This is Mary. She's the first person that I helped reverse end-stage kidney failure, came to me on the transplant list with a GFR of 14. That's an estimate of how much kidney function she had, so 14%. And her doctor said, "This is stupid, don't do a diet, it's not gonna work." She goes, "Great, I have nothing to lose, might as well try." She joined my first rapid recovery group, which is a 6-week group where I work with you every day. And she went up 2% every week. And at the end of the group at 6 weeks, she was at 27%, which you could live your whole life on. That was almost 4 years ago. She still no longer needs, she does not need dialysis. She does not need new kidney. And in fact, she used to just lay around on her bed too. She said she trained her dogs to nap because she didn't have the energy to walk them. She's now traveled around the country. She's from Canada. She flew into LA when I was speaking there one day just to give me a hug. That was how good she felt. It's going to be weird after COVID, not being able to give people all the hugs we used to. But she's still doing well. She's married as well and living her life. Scotty had to drop out of law school because lupus was in her lungs and kept landing her in the ICU. She did my 6-week group, and at the end of it, she returned to law school and was running every day. This is Karen, who not only got her saliva back for the first time since the 90s, she said she was drooling and didn't know what to do with all the saliva in her mouth, but she also reversed her blood clot antibody, antiphospholipid antibody, in only 6 weeks in my group. And she was interesting because her doctor was so excited she was doing my program. He did before and after labs of everything, and all of her vitamin and nutrient levels were through the roof when she finished, as well as her cardiac function went to normal, and all of her other disease markers disappeared. This is Angela with scleroderma. You can see the skin gets hard and rough, and after 6 weeks it looks like she got plastic surgery or something, right? This is Jeannie, who got lupus at 70, who'd been feeling sick for 15 years, and her doctor just told her it was stress. And then one day, finally, the lupus markers showed up. She joined my group, and in 6 weeks, the lupus markers were gone, and so was the blood clot antibodies as well. Look at the glow. Everybody gets a nice, healthy glow to their skin. This was a doctor who did my group, who'd had rheumatoid arthritis, Sjogren's, and thyroid disease, Hashimoto's, since she was, or no, Graves, I'm sorry, since she was a child. Well, I'm trying to remember, I think it was 8 years old, she got her first autoimmune, and she had a negative ANA immune marker in 4 weeks in the group. Sometimes people don't even come to see me in person. This was a lady who went to my classes, and she learned how to reverse her disease from my classes, did it herself, and sent me these pictures that in 3 weeks, this is what she had looked like for decades, the one on the left, and in 3 weeks on my nutrition plan, you can see her skin clear up. That was only 3 weeks. This was another person. I said lupus can affect many of your organs, and sometimes it's your brain. And Mariana had lupus in her brain. She would have 3 to 4 seizures a day. Her anti-dsDNA antibodies, which are antibodies from lupus, were in the 3,000s, 3,300. And at the end of 6 weeks, it was 86. And that was just from using the nutrition. And she went from laying on her parents' couch to traveling around backpacking through Europe and stuff with her boyfriend. This was another one. Joyce, retired school teacher, was told that she'd be stuck in that scooter forever. She sent me this video at the end of the 6 week group of her walking. And it works for other things too. What I teach you is how to nourish your cells properly so they can repair themselves. This woman didn't even have a diagnosis. Sarah just had chronic pain, and she also had HPV, a virus that causes cervical cancer, and she'd had multiple surgeries and still never had a normal pap smear. And she did my program. Obviously, she lost a lot of weight. She got rid of her chronic pain, got off all her medicines, and her HPV virus was negative, and she had a normal pap smear for the first time in 10 years. And it's good for everyone. This is someone who did rapid recovery for 4 weeks with me, 32 pounds in 4 weeks, RA gone, and blood pressure off of her blood pressure medicines as well. This poor man, Freddie, just happened to chat with me at the gym and tell me how he didn't want to go on blood pressure medicines. He didn't know who he was talking to. I went, tell me about your diet. And he said, I can't eat all those fruits and vegetables because I'm allergic to them. I said, really? Well, what do you do? And he goes, oh, I have a big glass of milk every morning and eat meat all day. He was a police officer and a bodybuilder. So get rid of those 2 things and watch what happens. And the next time I saw him was about a month later, and he asked my husband permission to hug me. And he said he could eat fruit again. He used to need an EpiPen just to be able to eat fruit. But once he got rid of all the dairy and meat, his food allergies went away and he could eat fruits and vegetables again. He said getting fruit back was worth giving up the meat in a heartbeat. Works for children. This is a young woman that I took care of who was 14 years old, had lupus in her kidneys, her heart, and had been a code blue. They had to bring her back to life. I can't even imagine what her parents went through. We put her on the rapid recovery program, and she came back. Her kidneys were normal in 2 weeks. Her heart function went back to normal. She is now a much bigger teenager, and she's ready to graduate high school, and she's still been lupus free. She plays the viola. She does martial arts. She's a straight A student, and she wants to be a doctor when she grows up. I guess she's pretty much grown up now. She still looks adorable there. I want to give you this story, and then I'm going to go right into teaching mode. But my goal is to inspire you so much that you just do what I say when I teach it to you. So this story I love because it really shares the point that when you do the right thing for yourself, that there's this domino effect that can happen that can change the lives of people who know you and people who don't. And this is Rachel. Rachel called me up 4 weeks before she had a scheduled C-section to have her son. She already had a daughter who was 3 years old, and she had lupus and Sjogren's disease that she'd had for years. And every time she got pregnant, she'd end up in the ICU. She'd end up sick in the hospital. And she'd had 1 miscarriage already, ended up in the hospital, was determined to have a kid, but she was terrified that she was going to be stuck in the hospital and her baby was going to go home without her. So she read Goodbye Lupus, called me immediately. I said, you're having a baby in 4 weeks. We're doing rapid recovery. That's it. So you can see her shopping cart. Like that is greens, 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 a little bit of bananas, right? She filled up. She did exactly what I said. And the day before she was scheduled to give birth, she was running around a park teaching her 3-year-old how to fly a kite. And she had thought that all of her aches and pains were pregnancy related, that she couldn't get off the couch, but it wasn't. We got rid of all that inflammation. She had a healthy delivery. She had no relapse. She's actually gotten off of all of her medicines. And I don't have a picture of it now, but she just had another baby with a totally normal, healthy pregnancy, no complications, no resurgence of disease, and she's still really healthy. So she is a great success story, right? But right after she got better, they got a call from Israel that her mother-in-law was in the hospital and her husband had to fly out to say goodbye. Oh, before we go there, I forgot I had some before and after pictures here of Rachel. So that's the rashes she used to get. You see how clear her face is now. But this is her mother-in-law here. So Pearl obviously had morbid obesity. She was 68 years old at the time. She'd had type 2 diabetes since she was 38. And even on insulin, her blood sugar was in the 200s or 300s, very high cholesterol, even though she was on cholesterol meds. And her first heart attack was at only 41. And since she was 41, she had 25 heart attacks. She had 3 bypass surgeries and 10 stents. Okay, so she at this point had heart failure for 2 years, chronic heart failure, meaning that her heart was no longer able to function at a normal level. And at this point, right when they called, it was in 2017, the doctor said, this is it, her heart's too sick to heal. She's not coming back from this one. Heart attack number 26 was it. So her husband had just watched his wife miraculously heal from an incurable disease. And he went, no, I'm not accepting this. So one of the things I'm going to teach you guys is how you can get all your nourishment from these green smoothies that I teach people to eat. It's a very easy way to get your nourishment. So he took the Vitamix blender and flew to Israel, and he sat in the ICU and he made his mom drink smoothies. That's it. That was the only food she got was my smoothies. In 5 days, she walked out of the hospital. And since that time, only a year later, when I did this here, she was off her cholesterol meds in a year with normal cholesterol. She still needed some insulin, but now had normal blood sugar. Her chest pain was gone, lost over 20 pounds, and as you can see, was a completely new woman. The doctors had said her life was over. And just 5 days of hypernourishment, it started again. And now she's healthy. So you would think this be the end of the story, but it's not. The next thing I do is I get a call from Nir, which is the husband and the son. And look what happened here. Nir's growing like he's got some pregnancy going on. I said, Nir, what's going on? He said, Doc, I got diabetes. I said, how can you have diabetes? I know what your wife's making. I know she's eating the Goodbye Lupus protocol. And he said, well, I'm a teacher and at work, I go to lunch, I get other stuff. He was eating some meat, he was eating some processed foods, and he'd been so stressed, he almost lost his wife, he almost lost his mother. And the first thing I did was just talk to him and let him know, listen, they're okay. You don't have to be scared anymore. And he just started sobbing. I said, you're holding on to all the stress and fear, and they're okay. You're the one they're gonna lose if you don't take care of yourself. So I told him to get a therapist and work through this stuff, start exercising, and switch over to the same diet that healed his wife. I'm like, you know what to do. Well, 3 weeks later, I get this text message. He already felt like a new person. He's working out 3 times a week, doing more self-care, sleeping, talking to a therapist. And he had already reduced his metformin by half. And his blood sugars were already in the 130s. He'd lost 7 pounds already. In 1 month, his fatty liver that he'd had for his entire adult life was normal. Usually fatty liver goes away in 3 to 4 weeks on my plan. And in 6 weeks, his hemoglobin A1C, which measures your average blood sugar, is 4.8. That's not even close to diabetes. That's better than most average Americans who are not even close to diabetes. So in 6 weeks, all of his issues were gone completely. So there was Nir afterwards, no more belly, looking good, feeling healthy. And the reason I tell you the story is you look at these 2 beautiful kids, and these children have the genes for lupus, for Sjogren's, for diabetes, for fatty liver, for heart failure and heart disease, and maybe other things we don't even know about. But the diseases are going to stop here because these children are being raised on a high nourishing plant-based diet, and they're not going to trigger those genes for disease, and they're not going to suffer and die from the diseases that their ancestors have, that their parents suffered from. And so I always encourage people, listen, even if you're having trouble motivating yourself, think about what's going on with the kids. I just did rapid recovery with 2 9-year-olds, one with MS and one with lupus, 9-year-olds. And the youngest kid with lupus I've helped is 2 years old. The kids' diets today are the worst that they've ever been. Diseases are happening younger than they ever did before. I was considered young for lupus at 16. Now, that's not the case anymore. We need to do better for the children, because this is the first generation of kids that aren't expected to outlive their parents. We have to do better for them. We have to do better, and we can. And the good news is that if you can reverse a disease in an adult, you can prevent them in kids. So I want you to kind of take that with you, and I want you to use that to motivation to listen to me when I tell you all the things that you're probably not going to want to eat. So all the stuff I've been doing has led to a little bit of attention, which I never sought out. I really just wanted to be a doctor who helped the homeless. That was my life plan. So I didn't expect to be doing what I'm doing now. But I wrote Goodbye Lupus in 2015. It became a bestseller before I even published it. It was a pre-order just that I published secretly, and it turned into a bestseller. It's still a bestseller to this day. I have a green smoothie recipe book, and my most recent book, Goodbye Autoimmune Disease, I just published this year. And Goodbye Autoimmune Disease, I have dozens of case studies in reversing autoimmune disease, but the majority of the book is the emotional part of recovery. Why would you read Goodbye Lupus in one day and not just do what it says? Because the way we eat is not just about the right information. The way we eat is about tradition and culture and addiction and depression and anxiety and all of these other things, traumas, poor coping skills, poor self-care. There's so many reasons why people stay sick and reasons why people sabotage themselves. And so in my rapid recovery group, I work with people on that every day. They think they're coming in to change their diet. I change everything, the way they think, the way they talk to themselves, the way they treat themselves. A lot of people treat their bodies like a dog they keep tied out outside. They feed it the cheapest crap, they give it no love or attention, and they just want it to be loyal to them forever. And the thing is, your body is loyal to you. It's the one person who'll never leave you. But you got to start treating it better in every way if you want it to get better, both with love and energy and kindness and self-care in the best food. So for a lot of people have told me that was actually what was missing for them, and that's what allowed them to finally embrace all the information they've been getting from all the talks they've gone to over the years. So that one's meant a lot to me. And as you mentioned, I've been on the cover of some magazines, and this one, you know, it was kind of cool for me. It was very emotional for me to be on Fit Over 40 because I was told I'd probably be disabled by my 40s. So it was kind of cool to be on a fitness magazine. Now, granted, Fit Over 40 is more like you look good for your age, but I'll take it, you know. AARP is my next one that I'm going to look for. And I've been in Eating You Alive. I don't know if any of you guys have seen that. It's a great film showing inspiring stories of people recovering from illness, and Home and Family Show. And I've been on, gosh, especially lately, I'm on the news maybe once or twice a week now. And what that means to me, like I said, I've never really looked for any of this. I was just planning to be a doctor working in the streets of treating the homeless in Long Beach. But what it means to me is this is now getting to be mainstream. And that means everything to me, because I know personally, and through the thousands of people I've helped recover, that chronic disease is an invention of modern time, but it is not something that needs to happen. And it is something entirely reversible and preventable. And if I can get that message out, and people can not only save their own lives, but be able to keep the people they love in their lives, like their parents and grandparents, brothers and sisters and children, then that means that I'm really doing something that matters. And so that's why I'm so happy to get to talk to you guys today. So I'm going to review with you the Cliff Notes version of what I want you to do. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to promise you at the end, I'm going to tell you how to get all of the education I teach on the details of my protocol and how to do it. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to actually learn all that for free. So if that's okay with you guys, that way I don't have to rush. You don't have to take frantic notes, and you can, at your leisure, spend 5 hours listening to me when you want to and learn all the information that I put in my books. You can learn that in the classes, okay? So the short version of it is the first steps, and this is in Goodbye Lupus and in the classes you're gonna get to go to. You eliminate inflammatory foods, right? Steps 1, 2, and 3 is stop getting sicker. You wanna get healthier, stop getting sicker, right? So most of you guys know this stuff, because even the research I did, I came to the same conclusions as a lot of the other physicians, that animal products, processed foods, and vegetable oils and saturated fats, all that stuff make you sicker. But I'm not gonna go into all that stuff, because you've probably heard it a lot of times if you've done this. What I'm gonna show you is the inflammatory reason. And I don't want you guys to get all weirded out that I'm gonna show you a scientific pathway. Do not memorize it, just kind of sit back and sink in and just observe it, okay? This is the inflammatory immune pathway. And this is, this right here, arachidonic acid, is an omega-6 fatty acid. And omega-6 fatty acids are the ingredients that create your inflammatory immune system. So the immune system that will attack COVID-19, bacteria, that will help you when you bang your knee, right? A very important part of your immune system. However, if your inflammatory immune system's out of control, then you're going to be creating so much inflammation all the time that that becomes the disease and will trigger your genes for illness, right? So we want to have an inflammatory immune system that comes on when we need it, but then goes away, and an anti-inflammatory immune system that cleans up the damage so we can go back to normal, which is what we're lacking, and I'll show you that. But let's just look at this. So I learned this pathway in medical school, that this is the inflammatory immune pathway, arachidonic acid. These are the enzymes that break it down, 5 LOX, COX-1, COX-2, and then you create these products, leukotriene B4, thromboxane E2, and prostaglandin E2. Again, don't need to memorize that. What I learned is you use a medicine here to stop this one. You use a medicine here to stop this one. You use a medicine here to stop this one. What they never taught me in medical school was where arachidonic acid comes from. Well, it comes from meat and dairy and oils and processed foods. Now, we get the healthy amount of arachidonic acid from nuts, seeds, things like that, where it has some omega-6, but some omega-3 and some vitamins and minerals, and that's okay. But these sources here are primarily omega-6 and huge amounts of it that actually drive this pathway, because the more of this you eat, the more of this you make. So if you eat a lot of meat and dairy and oils, you're gonna upregulate your 5-LOX enzyme, your COX-1 enzyme, your COX-2 enzyme. And if you have more enzyme activity, guess what you're gonna do? You're gonna make more leukotriene B4, more thromboxane E2, and more prostaglandin E2. Why does that matter? Well, 5-LOX is involved in, it mediates cell growth. Now, cell growth is important. If you get an injury, you need to build more cells to heal it, right? But what if you have too much cell growth? It's cancer. If you have too much 5-LOX, you're going to make more leukotriene B4. Leukotriene B4, when you've got too much of it, will create inflammatory bowel issues, asthma, atherosclerosis, and heart attacks, chronic inflammation, arthritis, edema, and pain. So if you have any of these issues or any of these issues, guess what you're eating too much of? This over here, okay? If you have too much COX-1, COX-1 creates blood clots. Are blood clots important? 100%. You get a paper cut, you don't want to bleed out, you need some blood clots to heal it. But if you have too much blood clots, what's going to happen? You can have a stroke, right? So that's what happens here. So you could take an aspirin to stop COX-1, or you can eat less of these things right here, and you're less likely to have a heart attack or stroke. COX-2 is involved in building up your vascular system, vascular repair and vascular growth, blood supply. Now that's important. Again, you get an injury, you need to repair the blood supply. But if you have too much COX-2, you're going to have more blood supply to cancer, which is going to encourage cancer growth. If you have too much of this enzyme here, COX-2, you're going to have too much prostaglandin E2, which is going to cause more cancer, more irritable bowel, more inflammatory bowel, more chronic inflammation and pain. So you have any of this, you're eating too much of this. And I sure wish they had told us that in medical school instead of making me memorize 600 drugs per semester, because we didn't have iPhones back then. We had to actually hold it all in our brains. But that's the way it works. And to me, this pathway helps make a lot of sense out of things. I hope it does for you too. Now, once you stop getting sicker, this part is missing from a lot of vegan nutrition. People know, I know not to eat meat. I know not to eat meat, dairy. I know not to eat processed foods and oils. But what do I eat to actually accelerate my recovery? Because not all plant foods are built the same. Well, you have to eat the right foods that accelerate recovery. So this is what I want to talk to you about. A lot of people on plant-based diets, they eat their vegetables, they're cooked. They eat a lot of beans, rice, other stuff. But the raw vegetables are not necessarily a huge component. And if they're not, you're not getting as much nourishment as you need to, especially if you have an illness. So I've had sick vegans come to me. You guys might know Ellen Jaffe-Jones. She's a famous vegan athlete, former news reporter. She's published best-selling vegan books. And she's been teaching plant-based eating for years. She actually used to do food demos for another plant-based doctor. And 2 years ago, I got a text message from Joel Kahn saying, "This is Ellen, fix her," which is how we talk to each other from the East Coast. It's fine. So I talked to Ellen, and she was eating beans and potatoes and lots of cooked foods, no raw foods really to speak of, maybe a little salad here or there, and not the other components of the protocol I'm going to teach you. And we added that to her diet. She actually switched into having my green smoothies, and that's a way to get in your raw vegetables. And in 2 weeks, her psoriasis was gone. So I told her, listen, you probably would have gotten psoriasis 20 years ago if you hadn't been plant-based this long. So you weren't getting the inflammation from your food, but you weren't eating enough of the anti-inflammatory food, the truly anti-inflammatory food, which are the raw vegetables, especially cruciferous vegetables, to stop this from happening, because autoimmune genes, they're persistent unless you're persistent back. So the raw vegetables are important, and they should be a large part of what you eat. What I tell you is, listen, instead of having a big bowl of beans and rice and having a little salad on the side, have a giant salad, throw some quinoa and beans on top. Make the vegetables, this is where your vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and phytonutrients come from. And they're much less once you boil them out. So when I switch people from the cooked vegetables to the raw vegetables, that's when the diseases go away. And if you're already healthy, great, just add them, right? And make sure you never get sick. Just keep on being as healthy as you can. So if you're not eating raw vegetables, make sure you do. When I'm doing rapid recovery with people, they're getting over a pound of raw vegetables a day. That's one of the reasons their diseases go away so quickly. So I'm not joking around about vegetable intake, okay? The second thing is water. Most people don't talk about water intake. Again, sometimes we see some sick vegans out there because they're drinking their tea and they're drinking other stuff, but they're not drinking their water. Water is necessary for every single chemical reaction that gets rid of inflammation. Water is necessary to pad your joints. So if you have arthritis and you're dehydrated, you don't have padding in your joints. Lack of water, the most common symptoms associated with lack of water or insufficient water intake are headaches, constipation, and low energy. Think about how much money people spend trying to solve those problems between caffeine, laxatives, and ibuprofen. And meanwhile, all they needed was water. So most people have no idea that they're dehydrated because the most common symptom of dehydration is lack of thirst. So most people don't even realize they're dehydrated. When people are trying to recover from really intense illnesses, I have them at 96 ounces to a gallon a day. These people are drinking their water. Now, if you're over 120 pounds, you go for that gallon of water a day. But we're supposed to be like the earth, mostly water. And many people that I see, they're lucky if they get a glass. Or one lady told me, whatever I accidentally swallow when I brush my teeth. She'd had constipation for 20 years, had 2 surgeries on her bowel because of the constipation. It was gone in 2 weeks when she started drinking water. She said no other doctor had ever asked her if she drank water, even the ones who operated on her colon. Imagine that, right? Very, very important for recovery. A lot of times people eat perfectly, but they're dehydrated. They don't get the results until they hydrate themselves. And this is where it gets really fun and exciting, people. The other thing a lot of healthy or people trying to be healthy and plant-based are missing are omega-3 fatty acids. Unfortunately, the omega-3s have been the baby that got thrown out with the bathwater when people started talking about fats. So I know that a lot of the traditional plant-based movement, you know, they kind of lumped fats together. And it's not because there's anything wrong with omega-3s. Where that came from was some of the original studies that was done, like Dr. Esselstyn's important work that he did. He took people on meat and dairy diets and he put them on a plant-based diet with no fat. And they had really good recoveries. So he just kept it that way. But they never did the next test, which would be, what if we just test the different plant fats? And what I found is when you use the plant fats, the recovery is faster, like Pearl, who walked out of the hospital in 5 days, right? So I'm going to show you why omega-3 fatty acids are so important and why you don't want to skip them, okay? So flax and chia seeds are a great plant-based source. They work well, and I'll show you why. One is they integrate into your cell membranes to make your membranes more responsive and flexible. So for example, this healthy membrane has lots of omega-3s. Nutrients go in. So you ate all those raw vegetables. You want nutrients to go in, right? Nutrients go in, toxins come out, healthy person. But if you don't eat omega-3s, you're going to have a much more rigid cell membrane, which means you ate all that kale for nothing, because most of it didn't even get in the cell, and then toxins are going to build up. This is also why people have these hard detox reactions when they start to really hypernourish intensively, is that the omega-3s come in and all these toxins just come out, and they'll spend a week feeling like they have the flu before they start feeling superhuman. So that's number one. This is also involved in your metabolism, by the way. So if you're someone who exercises a lot but can't lose weight, your cells aren't getting the signal that they want you to drop weight. Adding omega-3s will cause faster fat loss. Sometimes people believe this stuff, that all fats are the same, and if you eat more fat, you get more fat. It's the opposite with omega-3s. The more omega-3s you eat, the faster your fat loss and the faster your recovery. The second thing is these are necessary building blocks for your nervous system, for your memory. It's been shown to improve memory, mood, and cognitive, anti-aging, protects against dementia and Alzheimer's. And research has shown that ALA, which is in flax and chia seed, is important for protection against dementia, not just EPA and DHA, which is what's been traditionally taught is important. So this is the part that's really sexy to me because I work on the immune system, and this is what's appealing to nerds like me, is that omega-3s are actually the essential building block of your anti-inflammatory immune system. So if you're able to get sick, but you can't seem to get unsick again, you're missing your omega-3 fatty acids, okay? It's kind of like if you think about it as you have work done in your house and contractors come in and they fix your wall. Your wall was broken, they fix the wall, but then they leave all the drywall and dust and crap all over the floor and leave, right? Well, now it's still a mess. You need the anti-inflammatory immune system to come in and clean that up so that you're back to normal again. Many, in fact, most people are completely missing this. So if you look at this pathway, it looks a lot like the omega-6 pathway. You get the flax and chia seeds, you get ALA. You go down the pathway, you get EPA and DHA, which are the more famous cousins of ALA, and you get your anti-inflammatory immune system, prostaglandin E3, and leukotriene B5, right? Now, here's why I want to show this to you, all right? Don't get overwhelmed. I'm going to show you something really cool. I went to Carnegie Mellon, which is all about computer science and hacking, right? So we're going to hack your health. This is one of the secrets or keys. It's not a secret because I tell everybody, but one of the keys to why I can get people who've been sick for decades better in a matter of 1 to 2 months, sometimes 10 days, is this right here. Here's the omega-6 and omega-3 pathway side by side. They look very similar, don't they? And I have all this in Goodbye Lupus written out, and I go over more slowly in my classes that you're going to see. But here's why, if you've ever heard that you can't actually absorb omega-3s from flax or chia seeds, this is where that information comes from. So delta-6 desaturase is the same enzyme that breaks down LA and ALA, right? The problem is this enzyme prefers the inflammatory pathway for some reason. We don't know why. So as long as you're eating oils and animal fats and processed foods, dairy, meat, whatever, then you are primarily going to be on this pathway and creating inflammation, even if you eat flax and chia seeds. It's also why when people say add a teaspoon of flax to your life, that's not going to make much difference, especially if you're still eating anything bad for you, right? But if you eliminate inflammatory foods completely and you start really hyper-nourishing with flax and chia seeds, I have people, if you're already healthy, a handful a day is fine. If you're not, half a cup or more a day, right? What happens is if you stop eating those foods, bam, this enzyme comes over to this pathway. Boom. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, look at all that. So now you have hijacked your immune system to create tons and tons of anti-inflammatory immune cells. And this is why people I see who have had inflammation and like this in their hands for years, if not decades, can suddenly get the wedding ring back on in a week, because the inflammation comes down that quickly. How exciting is that? And another cool fact is when you make all this extra EPA, the EPA actually inhibits breakdown of arachidonic acid. So you actually have less breakdown of arachidonic acid into your inflammatory immune system when you've got high doses of omega-3s. So I hope that inspires all of you guys who have been fat phobic to rethink your position and realize that omega-3 fatty acids are actually the key to your health, whether it's your brain and your nervous system, your metabolism, or of course your immune system. So I'm gonna just leave you with a couple tips that I have for you. One, there's multiple ways to do this, okay? You can eat healing meals. So you like to eat big salads. My salads have to be at least as big as my head, which I have a small head, that's not hard, but I like really, really big salads. Not everybody likes to eat kale as much as I do. So one of the ways we've overcome that is what we call the smoothie solution. If you take all of the greens and you shove them down into a really strong blender like a Vitamix, and you throw in your handful of flax or chia seeds, you put your water in there, then you add fruit for flavor. It's like 2 cups of fruit can fit in there after all the greens. Then what happens is you get your greens, your nourishment, you get your omega-3s, you get extra water intake all through a straw, and it happens to taste like pineapple and mango. How amazing is that, right? And the most important part of it is it works. It works. So I want you guys to get free recipes. So if you can do a screenshot here, go to our website, smoothieshred.com. My husband made that website as a public service. We have free smoothie recipes that actually taste good, because if they don't taste good, you won't drink them and it'll be a waste of produce. And we have free videos for education. And for people who want to, we give access to our free Facebook community, people all over the world who are just saying that they're gonna drink more smoothies and get their health back. They don't even have to be vegan. or plant-based at all. So when you go to the website, this is what it looks like. And you'll see there's all these free recipes and there's all these free videos. And it's just a really great place to get resources to keep educating yourself and keep moving forward. And then for people who are as old as I am and still on Facebook, you know, I'm 43, I'm still on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, you can still go in there and join our community. And it's a way to connect with my husband and I and share your victories and successes and ask your questions and things like that. So that's smoothieshred.com to get all of that stuff for free. And, you know, people are always posting, they're losing weight. They got off their blood pressure medicines, got off coffee, no more anxiety meds, no more sinus meds. And these are people we've never met. Lupus in remission, going back to running from being unable to move. Y'all keep me motivated. So it's a really cool community. So the last things I'm going to give you to take home with you is I want you to be able to start doing something even before you go to the classes. So these are my biggest tips I'm going to give you to help you get started today. So the first part is to add what you're missing. If you had the aha moment watching this today that you have not been eating any raw vegetables, or if you do, it's like a carrot or some lettuce on your veggie burger or something, this is one of the most powerful things you can do to improve your health is add what you're missing. Your flax and chia, your water, your vegetables, okay? And the easiest way to do it, like I said, is just make a green smoothie. So whether you're already plant-based or vegan or vegetarian or still a meat eater, if you add what you're missing, you're gonna start feeling so much better. I just had an appointment today with a patient who said, you know, she's still eating meat, but she added the smoothies and she goes, it's amazing. I have so much energy now. I have more mental clarity and she feels more ready now to get rid of the meat so she can actually get rid of the RA. So you start feeling a lot better. And when you add the smoothies to your current diet, people find that they're easily able to lose weight because the nourishment actually helps their metabolism. The second thing is to start immediately. Sometimes people want to wait for New Year's or like their birthday or I don't know when. Start immediately. Sometimes they want to wait for an appointment with me. I'll pull up someone's diet and say, didn't you read my book? What is this diet? And they'd say, well, I knew you were going to tell me what not to eat. So you're not going to prison. There's no last meal. Come on, guys, start now. Don't wait until some made up day. And even if the last meal you ate was horrible, you can make a better decision now. And online, I always encourage people. I'm always active on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube that as long as you keep trying, you're going to get there. The average smoker quits 20 times before they succeed. So if you've messed up many times, you keep falling face first into a bowl of Ben & Jerry's or whatever it is, you can always start again. And right now is always the perfect time. So I always tell people, if you're listening to me right now, then you're still here and it's not too late. So make sure that you get started with whatever part of this you're ready to do. Make sure you're focused on what's good, what helped me survive my disease. And be happy was always obsessively celebrating what was good, even on the worst days. And if you're focused on your struggles and your problems, then the whole world feels like struggle and problem. This is one of the biggest things we do in my rapid recovery group every day is we make them celebrate. Because if you could still find something good about this life and this, even on your worst day, then there's something to fight for. But if you don't do that, it's very hard and hopelessness can take over. So make sure every little thing you do right, even if that day the only thing you could think of was tying up your laces right, take it. Right shoe on the right foot, but really work harder, search deeper. There's so much beauty about being you that's there if you're willing to look for it. And one of the biggest things that help people be successful is focusing on your why. This was my husband and I renewing our vows at our 10-year anniversary. Actually, our 15-year anniversary is coming up in October. In October, I will be 15 years lupus free, and we'll be 15 years married to the most amazing, awesome, beautiful person in the world that I just am excited to wake up next to every day. That was us renewing our vows at our 10-year anniversary. We re-wore our wedding clothes, and our kids we were all just spontaneous, and it was just beautiful. But this is one of my whys, is this family. I get to grow old with my husband now rather than looking forward to him having to take care of me, right? So we get to grow old together and look forward to that. I get to see my children grow up, and I got to have children and see them grow up and to be there for them, and maybe my grandkids and maybe my great grandkids. I mean, I'm aiming for like 120 because why not, right? And on top of that, I have all these other parts of my life, being here for you right now, being able to inspire other people to live their best life and to live their dreams and to give their gifts. People like David, who can create art, who could have lost his fingers. People like Kathy, who could get married rather than be disabled in her bed watching Oprah, right? That we have so much more that we can do, and we have to look for what it is that inspires us. Because if we're not focused on their big why, then we're going to be focused on what we want right now. What you want right now might be junk food. What you want right now might be to sit on your couch and do nothing. But if what you want most, which I call your why, if what you want most is clear in your mind, then you're not going to give in to those urges. You're going to do what's right for yourself, even if it's inconvenient, because what you want most is going to be on your mind. So that's a really important part of it. And I have like chapters of this in my Goodbye Autoimmune Disease book, but I really want you guys to focus on that. Why even bother to eat healthy? What does it mean to you, and what do you want for your life? And the other part is find a supportive community. It looks like you guys already have found one with each other. It's really important not to feel alone. My husband and I made a supportive community online, but wherever it is, whether you're using meetup.com. Right now it's going to be all online meetups. I actually just got invited to an online potluck for Houston plant eaters. An online potluck. I said, how does this work? And I read the email, and we're each going to make our own dish and join a Zoom meeting and then show each other what we made. But we need our tribe, right? You don't want to be the only weird one wearing tie-dye, eating leaves. You want to have your community of people where you feel supported and loved and able to do the things you want to do. So make sure that you do that.